Good morning. Y'all know what we've been discussing, but let's go ahead and have prayer before we get started. You want to lead us?
Let us pray. Most holy and all wise Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this Lord's Day that we can come here this morning and study thy word and worship you. We ask all the things that we do today that are pleasing to you. We ask that we clear our minds of early thoughts and enter in. We're so thankful, Heavenly Father, for the teaching program we have here, the teacher we have in the back. We ask that you would be with Dennis this morning as he brings in those thoughts on relationship and Sermon on the Mount. We ask that we clear our minds and go and study this time. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Marcus. So, we've been talking about these passages that are related to God, self, and others, and Jesus mentions in his Sermon on the Mount. And last week we dealt with this premise of being angry and the challenges that Jesus introduces when he changes it, asks us to change our attitude towards the law. The Jews obviously were bound in the law, and Jesus asked them to, yes, the law is valid, but I'm going to ask a little more of you. I'm going to ask you to address your hearts. They were perfunctory, apparently, in their approach to God. They did what he asked them to do, but they were doing it only because it was something that other people expected. They weren't doing it because they wanted a relationship with God. And we can be guilty of that. We can be guilty of going through the motions. I played basketball in college, and I had a coach who would say, Dennis, you're going through the motions today. Okay, because I was not mentally engaged. I was physically doing what I was supposed to be doing, but I wasn't mentally engaged, and I was making mistakes. Okay, and we can do that in our service to God. We can be about the day-to-day, trying to be good and all that kind of good stuff, but we're not doing it for the relationship. We're doing it because that's what other people expect. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying it's not the only thing. And that's what Jesus is trying to tell these people. He's trying to tell them, look, you're caught up in the action rather than the heart that drives the action.
One thought on that, Dennis. Also, sometimes we're guilty because we do it because we like to do it.
Yeah.
We want to do it, not because we feel responsibility.
Well, I've had, some of y'all know I substitute teach occasionally, and I deal with kids all the time. And one of the things I've chatted with them about off and on during my years of doing this is that there's morality, right? And morality is what culture expects of us at one level, all right? Culture expects us to be, quote unquote, good. You hear that on both sides. All the political parties talk about being good. But then when you get into the actual doing of the good, there's a disagreement, right? The different parties have different perspectives on what being good is. And the challenge we have as Christians is, who's our director? It's not culture. It's not society. It's not ourselves. It's not philosophy. Okay? It's God. And if we're not reading and engaging our minds with this, we'll talk about that more later, but we're not engaging our minds with the book, then we're doing it based on our own self-interest, to speak to Gene's point. We're doing it because it appears good to other people or because it feels good to us, whatever the driver is, but we're not doing it because we want a relationship with God. And we may think we are, but we need to challenge ourselves all the time on why we're doing good. We're going to talk about motive a lot today, but there's a real nuance, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to do it anyway. There's a real nuance between desiring to do good, all right, which is something that we would do, and the challenge of desiring for it to be noticed of others. Okay? When you go out and give money to charity, do you feel good about it? Of course you do. You should. Okay? You're going to feel good because you're helping somebody else. All right? So the next question is, why did you do it? Was it only to feel good? Nothing wrong with that. All right? But is there another motive that's driving that? And that's relationship with God. Okay, there's another motive, and that is I want to be seen of men. I want somebody else to notice. How many of us plead guilty to wanting to be noticed for doing our good deeds? If you're not raising your hand, you're lying to yourself.
Well, now, I disagree with that.
Okay?
You can have that attitude, but you can have the attitude that there's a need out there and I've got the wherewithal to help, I'm gonna help.
I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
I don't care if you know it. I don't care if I raise my hand and tell my neighbors, I donated money, you know, ha, ha, ha. No,
Are you saying you never want to be acknowledged for when you do good?
I've never been acknowledged to do good. No, I have not. Nobody's ever come to pat me on
No, missing my point.
Boy, you did good.
Are you saying you don't want to be acknowledged for doing good? When you do good at work, do you not want to be acknowledged for it?
I am acknowledged for it. I get paid every twice a week.
Bottom line is you're acknowledged.
And I'm about that message. So
We desire promotion, we desire recognition. It's a natural part of being human to desire recognition. Okay, is it wrong to desire recognition?
probably not.
No. Okay, is it wrong to desire for recognition in and of itself? Yeah. Okay, if we're doing everything we do to be recognized of others, and not because we want to do it because it's the right thing to do, to speak to your point, okay, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with our motive. Okay, we're going to talk about that a lot today. So basically, this issue of who we are and what we do and how we operate is something that's related to self. When Jesus talks about doing charity, okay, what does he say here? Before you do charity, get right with God. Get right with your brother. Okay, the act of charity is good. He's not saying don't do it. But if we're not doing it, if we have other issues that we need to deal with, he's saying deal with those issues. Because the act of charity is not going to eliminate the fact those issues exist. Okay? I'm dealing with deep psychological stuff here. Okay? In your life, you will have people that you do not get along with. It's going to happen to you. Okay? No matter how much you may desire it not to be that case. There will be people that you don't get along with. What do you do to resolve that? I'm asking honestly. What do you do?
Well, in my case, I just leave them alone.
Okay, that's one solution is just to back off and withdraw, right?
I mean, if that'll call the police on you, then you got a bigger problem.
Yep.
You're just gonna say, nope, not gonna mess with you.
Before you withdraw, what is your responsibility as a Christian?
Try to reconcile if you can.
Yeah. Make an attempt at reconciliation. Okay? If that person rebuffs you, to speak to the point being made there, you've done all you can do. You've done all you can do. Okay? Now,
Be at peace with all men as much as life is.
there is something you can do beyond that. What is that, obviously? You can pray. You can pray for the person. You can pray for your attitude towards them. You can pray for relationship. You can pray for all those things. Okay? You've done what you can do to try to reconcile. You've made an attempt, but you can still try to love your enemy. To show, and the only way you have left to love them is how? You cannot treat them poorly, action,
Keep praying for them.
and you can pray for them.
That's what you can do.
Anything else you all can think of? I mean, those are kind of, you can obviously go out of your way to help other people to see that person in a better light. Sometimes that's not possible. The person is not somebody that you want to recommend. Okay? So then you're stuck with not speaking evilly, right? I struggle with that one. And I'm bringing these issues up because they are challenges we all face. If you know a person has a problem with stealing, if you know a person has a problem with treating people poorly or wrongly, and you see somebody about to engage with that person, what's your responsibility? I'm asking hardly, what is your responsibility? Do you have a responsibility to go to that person and say, watch out?
It's not gonna hurt.
I'm not saying there's a right answer here, because I don't know the right answer, okay? I think that it probably depends on circumstance, it depends on the situation, it depends on a lot of things. But I have personally been in a situation where I had to warn somebody about somebody else. Okay? And they thanked me later for warning them. I didn't say don't do business with them. I just said, be careful. Be careful.
All those situations where do unto others as you would have them do to you.
That's a good one.
kicks in.
Yep. Yep. Golden rule kicks in, basically. There's not a given answer because the circumstances drive it to some degree. But what should be the baseline in us? We're looking out and desiring the best for that person and all the other persons involved. Okay?
Both
Gene?
people on both sides of the line. We're doing it for both of them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we're
The one who's fixing to be making a bad judgment and the one who's gonna be receiving receiving.
right. I understand that this goes back to, again, relationship. What kind of relationship do you have with the person you're going to warn? If you have no relationship with them, your warning is probably going to be discounted and ignored. Okay, so it really is a nuanced situation where you have to sit down and pray about it, maybe even engage with somebody else and ask for advice, but be careful. Be careful.
I'll add in this, if someone is advising another party not to do business with me, better speak with me first before they tell another person.
Yep, that's the reconciliation issue, right? Exactly.
And it's same with us, if we tell someone not to engage in a relationship with someone, we better go to that person first, A, to make sure it's true, B, to try to reconcile.
Yep. And you heard what Kenny's saying. Basically, you have a responsibility to the person you have a poor relationship with. And when we talked up front, as Gene brought up, we need to try to reconcile with that person. In that process, we need to explain to that person why we have a problem and how we view our relationship going forward. Okay? If we can't reconcile, I cannot recommend you to other people. Okay? So it's a difficult situation, okay? But it's a real one. In the business world, in a whole variety, in the world in general, okay? I have kids at school come to me, I'm sure Anthony's had the same situation, Andrew, same situation where kids come to you and say, I got a problem with this student, what do I do? How do I handle it? Okay? And it's a challenging situation. Okay, so we're going back to motive and how we address each other, and we'll be getting to that more as we go forward. So, to speak to the point, reconcile first if possible. Okay, that's the first thing you're supposed to do, and basically that means to change your perspective, to change your attitude towards that person, and they do the same with you. Okay, in general, in my life, reconciliation is always possible, or generally possible.
You know, just an incidental to that thought. When you're engaged in that in the right way, it helps you. When I'm doing that, I'm eliminating something that has power over me in a detrimental way. When you reconcile, when you have your right attitude, now then a lot of these things don't bother you anymore because you have an inner peace. I'm talking about me, the one that's going or not receiving the reconcile, either one. By having the right attitude, it makes your life, my life, I make my life better. I'm eliminating that which has power over me.
Yeah.
I don't want them to have that power.
You're letting go, basically. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And,
you're doing the right thing.
yeah, well, the other thing that happens, whether you mean for it to happen or not, is that person knows that you're aware of their challenge and they know you're watching. You're aware. Okay? And which may or may not have a positive influence on them. Okay, so again, this is tough stuff because we're talking about life and the way life operates. Any other comments before we move on? Bottom line, try to reconcile. Daniel.
Back on Doug's comment, do unto others
Yep.
situation. The temptation is, for me at least, especially in business scenarios, is to do unto others what has been done to you.
Yeah.
And it's just a cycle,
Yeah.
and we've got to break that cycle.
Yeah, do unto others before they do unto you. I think that's there's another side of it. Yeah, it goes back to motive, right? And it goes back to the willingness, we're going to talk about humility a lot, but it goes back to being humble and not wanting always to have your way, and recognizing that sometimes letting somebody else have their way is not the worst thing in the world, okay? Unless what they want to do is harmful. And that's a judgment process, and we'll talk about judging later on in Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount. So, next subject he deals with is lust. Obviously, this is an issue of self-control. The old law says you shall not commit adultery. Jesus says, no, that's true, but I don't want you to think about it. That's basically what he's saying. I don't want you to, if you had the chance, you would, basically. Can we admire somebody else's beauty and not lust?
Repeat that.
Can you admire another person's good looks and not lust?
Yes.
Sure. Happens all the time. Good looking person. Nice hair, nice clothes, whatever the situation is. You can admire somebody else for a variety of different reasons and not desire them for purposes of sexual gratification.
Can you define lust?
Go for it.
My definition of lust is unlawful desire.
Yep, an unlawful strong desire. Yep.
And for every appetite that we have, by being a Homo sapien with a spirit from God, every lustful appetite that we have, God gives us a lawful means of
Yep.
satisfying.
And the word lust, this is obviously dealing with sexual gratification. It goes beyond sexual gratification. Can you lust for food?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Sure you can. Okay? There's a lot of things you can you lust for money? There's a lot of things you can lust for. And what Jesus is saying basically is get it under control. Get it under control. And this is something only we can control. Nobody else can do it for you. God's not going to do it for you. You got to do it. It's yours to control or not. Okay? You have to find your own mechanisms to deal with that. Okay? If you have a particular appetite, to use Gene's term, for something, you know it, nobody else does unless you tell them. You're going to have to decide, I'm going to control that or I'm not. Okay? And that's a personal decision. It's a personal thing. It's your relationship with self that deals with that. And if you have a struggle with a particular appetite, it could be drugs. There's lots of things it could be. If you have a personal appetite for something, you need to sit down and deal with yourself. And if you need help, go to an expert that can help you in dealing with that. Okay? Prayer's obviously a key element to it. Relationship with self is a key element to it. But we know that some things can come to control people and they need assistance. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. When James says, confess your sins one to another, that's looking for help. That's seeking help. Okay? And be careful how you do it, who you do it with, but you need to do it. Right? Anyone else got a comment on that? But I say to everyone who looks upon a woman to lust after her, okay, this is where I ask the question, is it admiration versus desire? Okay, there's a recognition that that steak looks good. I don't have to eat it. I don't have to have the second, third, fourth dessert. You know see I'm going? We can control it. We can say it looks good. I'd like to have that, but I mean, how many times as you age, what happens to you is they'll ask you if you want dessert at the end of the meal. Yeah, I'd like to have it, but I shouldn't. Okay, there's a desire for it, but I'm going to control the desire. Simple example. This idea of looking on or desiring is basically to long for, to covet. Okay, what's the word covet mean? We're in the same thing, right? Strong desire for something. Okay? And coveting was condemned in the Old Testament. It's condemned in the New Testament. It's wrong. It's a easy sin to fall into. Peer pressure drives that. I think I've told you all the story. If I haven't, I'm going to tell it to you again. When I went through South Africa in '91, went through a little village, African village, one of the most tragic things I've ever been through my whole life. And there were 3 cinder block buildings on each side of the downtown. So 6 storefronts. 4 were empty, glass windows empty. 1 had Nike shoes and 1 had groceries.
One had what?
Nike tennis shoes.
What was the other one?
Groceries.
Groceries.
Groceries. All right. So 4 empty Nike shoes and groceries. Why Nike shoes? That was their sign. They had made it. If you could afford a pair of tennis shoes, you had made it in life. How many of us wear tennis shoes every day? Here are people that measured their success in life by having a pair of tennis shoes. It was a month's pay for the average person in that village to get a pair of tennis shoes. And almost everybody had tennis shoes on when I was there.
There are reported instances where people have been killed for their shoes.
Yeah, they're literally giving up food to buy tennis shoes. And how do I know that? Because they had bellies bloated out to here, a lot of them. They were starving. Okay? To show you how bad it was in that village, we went around behind it. If I haven't told you, this was a life-changing event for me. I went around behind the building with a guy, and there's people leaning up against the wall again, the bloated bellies, missing teeth, emaciated faces. Emaciation is when your skin just really shrinks against your bones. And he's pointing into the village. And it was, hundreds, maybe thousands, it was hard to count, of structures. And that was a home. That was a home. Hundreds of them. Most of them did not have anything. There was an opening in front. Some had a curtain, but mostly just had an open front. Okay? I don't know how many people lived in it, but that was it. That was just hundreds of those structures. Tin, cardboard, plywood, whatever they could do to put together a structure to live under, to get out of the elements. Truly sad to see, okay? What was worse was he asked me to look at the end of the rows, and about every third row had a box, like this, like this, like this, with no lid, different colors. He said, what do you think the boxes are for? I thought it was for trash. He said, babies. Dead babies go in this color box. Live babies go in this color box. Dead babies go to the cemetery. Guy comes by picking them up every day. Live babies go to the orphanage. Parents don't know their kids. Kids don't know their parents. I tell this story to the kids at school just to show them how lucky they are to live in this country. We do not have poverty. We have poor. Big, big difference. Huge difference. Okay? So what I'm trying to get to is that when we desire things, it's just amazing how culturally and locally how those desires change. Do you think that a person in River Oaks desires the same things that a person in Lake Jackson desires? You see what I'm saying? How it changes based on economic income? Do you think a person in one part of Lake Jackson versus another might have different perspectives? You bet. Okay? Does it matter? None of it, except if you let it. Okay? So, bottom line is, be careful what you covet. Be careful what you desire. Jesus goes on to say, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it's better for you to have one of your members of them that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it's better for you to lose it and your members than your whole body to go to hell. Why did he choose the right?
Why did they do what?
Why right instead of left? What are most people predominantly?
My dominant eye is my right eye.
Yeah, most people are right-handed. Okay, so he's speaking to a generalization here. Okay, that if what's really important to you to operate in life is important, it's going to cause you to sin, get rid of it. Change your attitude. Okay, and in the culture of the Middle East, when you eat, you use your left hand to dip bread into whatever you're eating, because the right hand is used for sanitation purposes. So if you lose the right hand, you're an outcast. He's literally telling you, don't let that be your issue.
That's why they cut the right hand off if you're
Yep,
stealing,
yep,
theft, thief.
yep. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. He's really, really getting to the heart of the matter here. Clearly, this is all about self-control, right? It's about an individual controlling their own desires. Maybe the most difficult to do as a Christian. I mean, that's what sin is, right? A give in to self. You're giving in to your selfish desires. Okay? Then he goes to divorce. This is not a class on marriage and divorce. Okay? So, but Jesus is clearly dealing with this specific issue of divorce in this topic. When he says, whoever divorces his wife, the old law says just give her a certificate of divorce. And there were relatively, it was really, as far as I'm concerned, nebulous about what the reasons were for what that happened. He was supposed to give back the dowry if he took her, if he gave her up, but basically you could do it. Jesus goes to the new law and says something different. He says, we're not going to have that be true anymore. Okay, we're going to have a specific reason for divorce, and that is infidelity. Okay? So Jesus is anteing up once again and saying, this common divorce is not going to be the issue. I was having a conversation recently where we were talking about, I'm old enough to have seen our culture shift in the United States, and obviously the shootings and the crime and the issues that are going on here are different than when I grew up. I mean, we took guns to school. When I was a kid in high school, we had kids in the parking lot with rifles in the back of their car. It wasn't going to be stolen. It was safe to bring it. We brought guns into classes to show the kids. It was just a very, very different environment. Okay, why was it different then than now? What's changed? Our culture changed. We have made a lot of things okay that have destroyed the value system. And we could get into all those, but one of the things we've made okay is divorce. It was rare when I was a kid to be in a class with somebody whose parents were divorced. It was rare. Now it's common. Okay? There's a study I just read of yesterday, where they are connecting this trans issue and with this issue with criminal activity to the lack of a father in the house. Okay? You know, we have a whole culture, a whole body of people that say the father is not necessary in a family.
Well, you find the problem with Africa right there, didn't you?
Yep.
I mean, what's wrong with Africa? What has been wrong with Africa? When you see all these pictures of all these people in need, the kids and the women, where are the men?
Yeah.
The men aren't there. Why aren't they there? Because they're out fathering another child with somebody else or shooting and killing each other. And that's been their culture for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how you're going to make them see that.
I don't know how we're going to reverse it in the United States.
I'm going to reverse it in the United States.
Yeah.
We're going to take somebody like our president who says this is going to stop. I'm going to use physical force to stop it.
Yeah.
And there's still people saying, oh, you can't do that. You know, we got a group of people in our country right now who can't recognize right for right.
Yeah.
They recognize right as wrong and wrong as right.
And that's what Jesus is talking about, right? Is that their desires were leading them to misconstrue the relationship that God wanted. How do you prevent divorce?
You teach the people who are involved in the marriage the right respect.
You teach a person how to choose the correct mate. To me, it's that simple. Okay? If you choose somebody that is the right kind of person and you're the right kind of person, you'll stay married.
Make it work.
You'll make it work. If you are into it for selfish reasons or reasons other than trying to make it work, you'll find a reason to leave. I don't know anybody that's had problems in their marriage. Okay? Now, the problems can be more or less depending on the couple, but bottom line is you have stuff come up. Conflict occurs. Okay? Now, how you gonna deal with the conflict? You're gonna walk? You know, when I was going through my high school years, I remember this phrase, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give it a shot. Okay, with this girl or with this guy. No, it's already over. it is already over. Because obviously you're going to find a reason for it not to be work if you want to. Okay? So Jesus is saying very specifically and very directly, don't get divorced except for infidelity. Okay? There are reasons for separation, I think, and that is when Jesus talks about a person who will not care for their own is worse than an infidel. A man that will not take care of his own family or abuses his family, I don't expect a woman to stay in that relationship. Okay? Now, I'm not going to judge anyone in particular. I'm just saying, why would you stay and get the snot beat out of you or your kids? Now, whether you divorce, you're going to have to get together with you and God on that issue. But to stay in the relationship, no, you shouldn't do it. Maybe you can help the person get help, and I've seen that happen. I actually know a situation where there was an abuser who got help, and they reconciled and had a great relationship after that. So it can happen. But anyway, it's about in this situation, we're talking about self, and we're talking about another, and we're talking about a relationship with God. Everybody's involved in that marriage relationship. Anybody that doesn't have all three involved in their relationship hasn't got the right kind of relationship. God, self, and others, your spouse, are involved, and you're all working together to make it work. He goes on to say, obviously, that sexual immorality is the issue. There's no doubt the exception that Jesus is mentioning is about sexual infidelity. That's it. He doesn't list anything else. There's just one exception to get out of a marriage. So, on to oaths. This is another interesting thing, and this is not really an issue today in the same way. I very seldom hear somebody, I swear to do this, except in court. I mean, do y'all hear people say, I swear to do this? Yeah, I've never heard that my whole life. I promise I'll do it, but I swear based on some deity or some my parents or my mother or whatever. I don't hear that happen today, but it did then. Okay, but the premise here is that you are what? You are invoking some deity, God in some cases, or something else in others that God made. You're invoking something to satisfy a need or a desire to do something appropriately. You don't need to do it. You don't need to do it. Just do it. Your word is your bond, right? We've all heard that. That's enough. Okay? Jesus goes on to say, let your yeas be yeas and your nays be nays. I mean, it's just that simple. Pretty simple. And this is, again, a selfish thing. I actually know of a situation where a person was involved in a divorce that was, quote unquote, okay. I mean, in the sense that their spouse had committed adultery and made the commitment, I'm never going to marry again. I give an oath, I'll never be going to marry again. And then she met somebody and wanted to get married. What do? Does the scripture apply? You know, that's hers to deal with. I'm just saying be careful. What I'm trying to say is be careful what you say, and just what Jesus is saying, okay? Be careful. Our commitments need to be honest, and they need to be fulfilled. It's just that simple. If I'm going to make a commitment to somebody, basically the handshake or the contract. When we built our house over on Teakwood, I asked Kelso if he would clear the land for me, and he said he would do it. I said, how much do you want? And he gave me a price. He cleared the land, I wrote him a check. We never shook hands. There was just a verbal agreement. But he fulfilled his commitment, I fulfilled mine. Okay? It should be that way. It used to be that way, right? It used to be that way. And it should be that way now. But unfortunately, be careful, because sometimes it's not. But it's a personal thing. You need to be the party that says, I'm going to do it and get it done. If the other person doesn't do their part, and I've been in that situation, you still did your part. You still did your part. Okay? Don't be guilty of not doing your part. Any comments on that before we move on?
Well, you gotta deal with lawyers today, because if it's not in the will, it don't count.
Yeah. Yeah, what he's talking about there is that in today's world, the lawyers get in the situation, and you do not want lawyers in a situation. You sometimes have to, but you don't want them because it gets ugly when the lawyers get involved. Then he deals with retaliation, and this is an issue of self-control. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, okay? First of all, they were misusing the premise of the teaching, in my opinion. He wasn't saying, and the Old Testament was not saying, if this person takes your eye, you should go take their eye out. If this person cuts your hand off, you should go cut their hand off. That wasn't the premise. The premise was an idea of justice. That justice needed to be meted out equally. So whatever the issue was, there needed to be a compensation that was like it, okay? This can be misused, and that's what Jesus is fixing to address. He says, do not resist the one who is evil, for anyone slaps you in the right cheek, turn to him the other. If anyone would, I'm having trouble reading this today. If anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. Now, are these commands, or are they examples, okay, of how we're supposed to operate?
Well, if he
Okay.
says, when I say to you, that sounds coming out of the mouth of
Okay, so if somebody comes up to you and says, I want you to go 2 miles with me, are you going to go 2 miles with them? Literally? I mean, I'm not saying that it's not important to take this as it's written, but at the same time, I think the issue here is to be ready to take the hurt yourself. You need to be on the side that is giving, not taking.
Now, when he wrote this down and put it in the scriptures,
Yep.
that's one of the most difficult things to practice.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
Very, very difficult to practice this.
Well, at this time, Dennis, the Roman soldier could compel a citizen to carry something
For a mile. Yep.
So Jesus was saying, but they didn't want to do it. And he said, oh yeah, you do it.
You're going to obey the law.
And you double it.
Yep. And so what's the premise here? That's my point. My premise is that go the extra mile. Do more than you're asked. Okay? Now, is there a nuance? If somebody comes to you repeatedly that is not taking care of themselves and demands or asks for money, are you supposed to keep giving them money and keep giving them money and keep giving them money and keep giving them money, enabling them not to work, not to do what not to carry their own load? You know, I'm saying it's a nuanced thing, right? There's a thing there where you have to use some judgment. And my dad always said, make sure that if there's hurt involved, that you're carrying it, not the other person. And to me, that's the premise. That's the premise. If there's an opportunity to help, do it. When I'm on the highway, I try to carry fruit. And when I see somebody who's on the highway looking for money, I give them fruit. Okay, I'm going to do something for them, but I'm not going to give them money because I don't know what they're going to do with it. But I'll do something for them. Okay, so and that's just my way of dealing with it. You can have your own way. Bottom line is, don't be the taker. Don't be the one that is on the taking side of the relationship. Okay, and that's hard. It is hard. When you know you're being taken advantage of, it is hard to bear that. Okay? But that's what Jesus, I think, is teaching. Okay? Anyone want to challenge that? It's
Say it another way, don't facilitate bad behavior.
Yeah, that's the other side of the equation, right? Is using some judgment. And I know of situations, I remember when we were youngsters, we had a lady at church who was very poor and was without a coat. And my mom gave her coat, okay? Which was a wonderful thing to do, except that now my mom didn't have a coat, you know? But so what? That was her choice and desire to do, okay? It's a balancing situation, and we've all got to deal with it in our own way. In the old law, there was, as I mentioned, there was this administrative justice, that equal justice to fit the crime. That really was what the intent was. And people were doing was taking it individually and applying it individually. And it wasn't, the idea was and is still that the court metes out the justice, not you as an individual personally. Don't look for opportunities to beat somebody else up because they made a mistake. You know, and what these people were doing apparently was just that. Somebody would take advantage of them, I'll take advantage of you. Okay, and that's not what was supposed to go on and shouldn't go on today. As has been said, we need to go the extra mile. We need to be a people who are viewed as caring. And that's what separates us. That's one of the things that makes us different. You know, we're supposed to be different. This is one of the things it does. We're not going to be people that act like other people. Doug?
Yeah, it's really gets to the heart of the matter in terms of what's moral behavior for a Christian. Our objective is not justice. You know, everybody sees the law as what's just, what's fair, but our objective is peace and reconciliation.
Yeah, very good.
So even if it costs us more to try to make the effort of peace and reconciliation, that's what we
Y'all hearing this?
That's our objective.
Doug is saying that peace and reconciliation is the Christian's forte, not justice. Okay? And that's hard. I mean, I'll give you a good example where it happens is when you see these people where some tragic events happen and someone's daughter or son or brother or sister or spouse is killed, and the person will go into court and say, I forgive you. Okay, there's an example of that from my perspective. I guess we're done for today. Okay, appreciate y'all. Thanks for the comments.